hum of the office building's air conditioning was the only sound that echoed through the empty cubicles as I sat alone at my desk, surrounded by the dim glow of the flickering fluorescent lights. It was well past midnight, and the usual hustle and bustle of the workplace had long been replaced by an eerie silence. The only thing that disrupted the stillness was the distant rumble of a passing truck on the deserted streets outside. I was engrossed in my work, attempting to meet an impending deadline. The soft tap of my keyboard keys was the only companion to my thoughts. As the clock on my computer ticked away, I began to feel the weight of solitude pressing down on me. It wasn't the first time I'd worked late, but there was an unusual tension in the air that night. A sudden creak from the floor above startled me, causing me to glance around nervously. I brushed it off as the building settling, a routine noise in an aging structure. But the unease lingered, creeping into the edges of my consciousness. I strained my ears, hoping to discern whether it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. Minutes turned to hours, and the ominous silence persisted. The usual sounds of the night, distant sirens, the occasional car engine, were absent, amplifying the solitude. I began to question my decision to stay behind, wondering if it was worth sacrificing sleep for a project that could have waited until morning. As I tried to shake off my growing apprehension, the office's motion-activated lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the empty cubicles. I paused, my eyes scanning the desolate workspace. Was I truly alone? The sound of my own breathing seemed to echo louder in the silent expanse. The building, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a labyrinth of uncertainty. I couldn't shake the feeling that unseen eyes were watching me from the shadows. Every creak, every gust of wind outside seemed like a potential harbinger of an unwelcome presence. I forced myself to refocus on my work, attempting to drown out the encroaching sense of dread. However, as I delved deeper into my tasks, the ominous feeling persisted, refusing to be ignored. The rational part of me insisted that it was just fatigue playing tricks on my mind, but my instincts screamed otherwise. Suddenly, a soft whisper reached my ears. I froze, straining to catch the elusive words. The building seemed to exhale around me, and my heart pounded in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being observed, that someone or something was there with me in the suffocating darkness. In that lonely office, I couldn't escape the unsettling sensation that I was on the brink of discovering a secret, something hidden in the shadows. The weight of the unknown hung heavy in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer alone at work. The late hours at the office had become my routine, a necessary sacrifice for the demanding projects that seemed to pile up without warning. The dim glow of the monitor cast a bluish hue on the otherwise deserted cubicles. It was the kind of silence that only a half-empty building could produce, a silence that felt more like a vacuum, swallowing any semblance of life. I was engrossed in my work, the soft hum of the computer and the rhythmic tapping of the keyboard creating a monotonous symphony. The city outside was settling into a deep slumber, and the glow of streetlights filtered through the blinds, painting the office in muted shades of amber. As the night wore on, a subtle unease crept into the edges of my consciousness. The logical part of my brain attributed it to fatigue, but the irrational, primal instincts whispered otherwise. A fleeting shadow caught my eye, a movement in the periphery that vanished when I turned to look. I chuckled at my own paranoia and continued working, dismissing it as a trick of the tired mind. The familiar hum of the air conditioning became a sinister whisper, and the soft creaks of the aging office building took on an unsettling rhythm. I tried to convince myself that it was all in my head, that the mind, left alone in the quiet hours, could conjure up ghosts where none existed. A glance at the clock revealed the lateness of the hour, far later than I had intended to stay. As I prepared to shut down my computer and gather my belongings, a sound echoed through the empty space. Footsteps. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to identify the source. The building's ventilation system? A security guard making rounds? The footsteps drew nearer, each one echoing like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. I hesitated, unsure whether to call out or retreat into the safety of my office. The oppressive stillness seemed to amplify every sound, and I could almost feel the weight of an unseen presence in the air. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and the office lights flickered, plunging the room into momentary darkness. Panic gripped me, and I fumbled for my phone, using its feeble glow to navigate the now foreboding space. I strained to hear anything over the deafening thud of my own heartbeat. The footsteps continued, each one drawing nearer until they seemed to echo right behind me. I spun around, heart pounding, only to be met with an empty corridor. The oppressive silence settled once more, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows held secrets I wasn't meant to uncover. In that lonely office, surrounded by the cold glow of monitors and the distant city lights, the line between reality and imagination blurred. The night held its secrets tightly, and I was left alone, haunted by the lingering fear that someone or something had shared the solitude with me. The night had fallen like a heavy curtain, cloaking the office floor in an inky darkness that seemed to swallow all sense of time. I sat hunched over my desk, the soft glow of the computer screen casting long shadows on the rows of empty workstations. Outside, the city slept, oblivious to the solitary soul laboring within the silent confines of the building. I'd grown accustomed to the solitude, the after-hours hush that permeated the office like a ghostly presence. But on this particular night, an unsettling feeling had settled in the pit of my stomach. The quiet was too profound, the stillness too absolute. It was as if the very air held its breath, anticipating something I couldn't quite grasp. The rhythmic hum of the air conditioning was abruptly interrupted by a distant, muffled sound. I strained my ears, trying to decipher the nature of the noise. It was a subtle shuffle, a soft scrape that echoed through the empty space like a whisper from the shadows. I told myself it was just the building settling, the usual creaks and groans amplified by my solitude. As I returned to my work, a flicker of movement caught my eye. A fleeting glimpse of a figure disappearing around a corner, vanishing into the labyrinth of office cubicles. I blinked, convinced it was a trick of the tired mind, but the unease lingered. I rose from my chair, the eerie glow of the emergency exit signs casting an otherworldly tint on the surroundings. The footsteps resumed, cautious and deliberate, echoing through the silent office like a haunting refrain. My own breath seemed unnaturally loud. As I followed the sound, the corridor stretching endlessly before me, a sudden chill ran down my spine as I rounded a corner and found myself face to face with the empty hallway. The footsteps persisted, now seemingly behind me. I quickened my pace, heart pounding, the flickering lights above casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. A whispered conversation reached my ears, too distant to discern the words. Panic set in, and I realized that I was not alone. Someone else shared the solitude of the office, hidden in the darkness, eluding my every attempt to confront them. I fumbled for my phone, hands trembling as I dialed security. The footsteps quickened, growing louder and more erratic. The once familiar office now felt like a maze closing in around me. I stumbled toward the exit, the sound of my own breath drowning in the disconcerting symphony of unseen movements. Security arrived, sweeping the building with a thoroughness that yielded no intruders. I was left with the unsettling realization that the footsteps, the whispers, were confined to the realm of the inexplicable. The building, with its silent corridors and flickering lights, held its secrets tightly, leaving me to grapple with the lingering unease that clung to the shadows.